So I'm filming 3 videos in a row right now, and I'm not sure which one I'm posting first, so you might hear the same speech about me being gone in 3 videos in a row, I guess. Anyway, I was gone for a while, 3 weeks to be exact, and that's the longest time I've ever been gone since I started posting regularly on this channel. And I miss you guys so much. So many of you reached out to me and let me know that you miss my videos and you want to see me, I guess, and you miss my posts on Instagram, which you should follow me on, by the way. But I don't think you realize that as much as you guys miss me, I miss you too. And oh yeah, the reason I was gone, I was writing my dissertation, and I submitted it a couple days ago, so I'm free, finally. And that feels really weird. Anyway, this is the second video that I'm filming today, so the speech is kind of condensed this time around because I already got everything out. But regardless, I missed you guys a lot. And so I thought that I wanted some interaction with you. So I posted on Instagram and I asked you guys to send in your unpopular bracelet opinions, and now we're gonna react to some. I did make note of these, so they are kind of paraphrased. Right off the bat, I'm gonna say I don't actually know if these opinions are popular or not. Based on your guys' input, I would say that a lot of these are pretty much 50-50 split, because a lot of people talked about the same things and said completely opposite things as unpopular opinions, so I'm not sure if these are actually unpopular, but I'm gonna react to them regardless. So the first unpopular bracelet opinion is that straight edges aren't always necessary. I was struggling with my edges for a very, very long time before I found the straight edge technique, and when I did, and I tried it out, I filmed a video on it pretty much instantly. That was a year and a half ago, I think. And then straight after that, I did a couple of tutorials where in the tutorial I also used the straight edge technique, which probably resulted in the tutorial being more confusing than helpful. And yeah, I think I would agree. The straight edge technique is not always necessary. This is very difficult to explain, but I think that the straight edge technique is only really necessary when the pattern is unbalanced. In my head, a balanced pattern is one that has roughly the same number of one type of knots on one side as the opposite type of knot on the other side. So a chevron, for example, that in my opinion is a balanced pattern because you've got these forward knots on one side and backward knots on the other side, super balanced right in the center. The arrowhead, a very balanced pattern. You've got the same but opposite knots on each side and the same number of them. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but it has to be roughly the same for it to be a balanced pattern. And balanced patterns don't really require the straight edge technique because they are straight in general, usually based on the structure. Unbalanced patterns are probably ones like the one that I showed in the video. I mean, that was a year and a half ago. For you, it's probably fresher in your mind, but for me, that was a year and a half ago, so I don't exactly remember what specific pattern I used there. But if I am remembering correctly, it wasn't super balanced. It was the strings heavily faced like sort of one direction, which usually results in wonky patterns. I spent way too long explaining that. Anyway, next one. The rainbow color scheme is overrated. And this one hurt me. This one hurt me in my soul because I love a rainbow color scheme, but I also understand where you're coming from. It is a color scheme that has been very overused, probably because it's the easiest color scheme to think of when you want something really super colorful. It's much easier to just take all the colors of the rainbow than to actually think of a color scheme that uses bright colors but isn't a rainbow. So I get it, but it also makes me sad because I do like the rainbow color scheme a lot. This one made me laugh a little bit because this is one that I got pretty much 50-50 of. Tape is easier than clipboards in terms of securing your bracelet, and the opposite was also said, that clipboards are easier than tape. Based on how many of you guys wrote that, and also based on common sense, I guess, it is definitely a matter of preference. I personally prefer tape. I've tried using clipboards, it is not comfortable for me. I think it also depends on how tightly you tie your knots, because for me, when I try using a clipboard, the bracelet just comes right out from under it, regardless of what kind of clipboard I'm using, even if it's a really strong one. It just comes right out from that because I tie my knots really tightly, and people who tie their knots a little bit looser, that might not be a problem for them. That's why I use tape. I prefer to use tape. It did take some getting used to. The only reason I actually started using tape was because I was filming, and using tape was easier in terms of filming. I used to use safety pins exclusively on like pillows and stuff, and it definitely took me some getting used to knotting like that because it's not super comfortable. But now that I am used to it, I actually do use tape even when I'm not filming, so it's definitely a matter of preference. Next unpopular opinion, repeating patterns are boring. And I've never really thought about this, but I kind of agree. And this sort of ties into the fact that a lot of people wrote in that they prefer thicker bracelets and that thin bracelets are not so fun to make. I think this ties into the same thing. The thinner the bracelet is, usually the more it repeats. So imagine like a chevron or an arrowhead, it repeats a lot in itself. But if you've got a really wide bracelet, pattern that repeats is usually bigger. And I definitely agree that makes it more fun for me personally. I prefer bigger bracelets. I prefer bracelets that don't repeat as often because the part that I enjoy the most about making bracelets is seeing how the design is created. And when you've got a repeating pattern, the design is created constantly, so you're not really that intrigued by it. When you're creating a big design, you're constantly intrigued because you want to see how the colors that you picked out match and how they're going to look in the design and how the design is going to look when it's created. And once you've made that first one, making all the other ones might not be as fun because you've already seen how it's made. I'm definitely over explaining this. I think you guys get it, but I think I agree with this one. I wouldn't say they are boring, but they're not as fun for me personally. The next unpopular opinion is that Bracelet Book is not the only source of patterns. And I guess I didn't realize that this was an unpopular opinion, because even though I do talk about Bracelet Book more than I talk about any other source, I guess, I do use a lot of different sources. I do mostly use Bracelet Book, and I'll get into why in just a second, but I do also use VK, which is Vkontakte, which is kind of like the Russian Facebook, I guess. It's a social networking website which is mostly used by Russian people. That is mostly where all the Russian knotters you see on Instagram post their patterns and host them, but also friendshipbracelets.net. I go on there to check out the patterns a lot as well. So when I'm searching for patterns, those are pretty much the three main places I go. And the reason why I use Bracelet Book more is just I enjoy the community more there, I guess. I might be wrong, but it just feels more alive to me, and so I personally prefer it. I do realize that by personally preferring it, I kind of swayed a lot of people in one direction, which wasn't intentional. It's just my personal opinion. But there are definitely more sources out there that you can use that are just as good. So next one is about wearing bracelets the wrong side up and how this person sees that as annoying and also kind of disrespectful as a seller, because they sell bracelets and people sometimes wear them the wrong side up. I don't really have an opinion on that. I find it strange how some people make bracelets and then post pictures of them the other side up, because in my opinion that side looks worse, and you can sometimes see the wrong colors popping through the knots on the other side that you don't see on the front side, which makes it look messier and weirder. So I don't understand why people post it the other side up, and I don't understand why people wear it that side up. Has to be a personal preference though, I guess, because some people genuinely prefer that side. I don't personally see it as a sign of disrespect. It's probably more just to do with the fact that they don't know that there is a right side, I guess, or that they prefer the look of the other one. But then again, I also don't sell my bracelets, so I don't know how it would feel if I were to do that, so I respect your feelings. Alright, next one. I hate bracelet ties. While pretty, they are not practical. I am a button girl. I don't really have an opinion on this. I don't wear my bracelets, and I also don't sell them. I mostly just collect them or gift them to my friends, family, and some followers through competitions and stuff. So I don't really have an opinion in terms of practicality, as I genuinely just don't wear my bracelets. I see how buttons are more practical though. Tying the ties can be annoying and they probably might untie and fall off, but aesthetic wise, I definitely prefer ties. Although I have seen some buttons done very aesthetically pleasing as well, so I guess it depends. For me personally, I like ties though. Using threads of different thickness doesn't make a difference in the knots. You are wrong. I know that this is an opinion, but this opinion is wrong. Kind of. I don't really think that it makes a difference in normal patterns unless the strings are drastically different. Like if you're using a sewing string and a yarn, then definitely it's gonna look different. But in general, if you're using embroidery floss and maybe some yarn in a normal bracelet, you probably won't notice the difference. But in alphas, it definitely makes a difference, because in alphas, you make your pattern horizontally, row by row, essentially like a printer, going like that. And it is essential that your knots are the same size. Otherwise, your entire row, instead of being straight, is gonna end up being like, I can't bend my arm like that, but end up being wonky. If one knot is smaller than the rest of them, then that is going to translate to the next row, and the next row is gonna be slightly wonky in that one knot. So for alphas, it definitely makes a difference, and I highly recommend using strings of the same thickness, preferably even from the same brand, when you are creating alphas. But for normal patterns, it really doesn't matter, in my opinion, unless the difference is very big. Teardrop loops are ugly unless on an extremely thin bracelet. I kind of agree, but I kind of don't. As with everything pretty much that I post on my channel, I posted like the teardrop loop, the straight edge technique, I don't know, the flat alpha technique. I basically posted videos on those techniques as soon as I found out about them. And since I did that video on teardrop loops, I haven't really made many since then, kind of because of this. I like making big patterns, but when you make a teardrop loop with a really wide pattern, the teardrop becomes giant. And I don't really like the look of that personally, and it's extremely annoying to knot because when you pull on it, it sort of collapses in on itself. I do like the one that I did with the fishbone chevron though, and the bracelet that I did in the tutorial as well. I really like the way that those turned out, and I think that that width is the best. Now, a year and a half later, I definitely prefer making a loop and then 2 triangle ends coming off from that. And if you want a tutorial, it'll be linked in the card in the description. I made one on that. It's essentially the same thing because if you think about it, a teardrop is like a reverse triangle end. So making 2 triangle ends coming off from the loop is kind of the same thing, but I prefer the look of that to teardrop loops. Sparkly string is not worth the hassle. You are wrong. I'm getting very aggressive here. I highly disagree with that. Sparkly string is the best, and I will fight you for that. I personally don't enjoy metallics that much, but sparkly string is awesome. Now, as I understand, this opinion doesn't actually come from the person who submitted it, but is instead something that is said to them that annoys them as well, and it is that you are too old to make bracelets and that this stuff is for kids. Yeah. I get that a lot in my life, and I got that a lot even before I started making an entire channel dedicated to friendship bracelets, and that is annoying. And I don't understand why we have to classify something as only for a specific age group. I think that's a very close-minded and kind of, I don't know, ignorant way of looking at things. And it is annoying. And throughout my life growing up as well, I was always told that, oh, why are you wasting your time on this? Like, you put so much time into it, that's such a waste of time. Like, my favorite phrase was, oh, you must have so much free time, in such a condescending way. I have pretty much the same amount of free time as everyone else has, but if you might play a video game or watch a TV show or do something else, I don't know, I choose to spend that free time making a bracelet. Why is that bad? This is my hobby. This is what I enjoy doing. Time spent doing something that you enjoy and doing something that brings you happiness is not time wasted, in my opinion at least. So that always annoyed me growing up, and I still get that to this day. If anybody's getting that from their parents or like friends or people around them in general, I'm with you in spirit. Alright, I've been recording for way too long, so I'm gonna wrap this up. The last one. If you start a new bracelet while you're already working on one, you'll never finish the first one. And I disagree with that entirely. Because I have a lot of bracelets that I have started at once, and that is generally how I knot. I create a bunch of bracelets and then I work on them simultaneously, switching from one to the other. But I think it entirely depends on your personality, I guess. If you are a person who can really focus on something and get it done, that's perfect. I'm not. I have a suspicion I have ADHD. I've never been diagnosed, but I strongly suspect that I have it. So for me personally, it is much easier to have a bunch of bracelets that I'm working on at the same time so I can switch from them when I get bored. It's usually about like 3 to maybe like 10 bracelets at a time that I'm working on, but when I make one bracelet exclusively, I get so bored and I need to be able to switch to keep myself entertained. And you can very clearly see this in my 24-hour challenge video that I did where I was knotting for 24 hours. I was switching bracelets all the time in that. If you want to see that, that's linked in the card in the description. I was switching it up all the time because I was constantly getting bored. So that is the only way that I knot. Anyway, that is going to be it for this video. I found it very entertaining looking through your guys' unpopular opinions, and I might do this again sometime if you want me to. As I said before, I've missed you guys so much, so this was actually really great for me to sort of connect with you guys once again. I'm so excited to be back. I was gone for so long and it was terrible. Thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you to my patrons. There are so many of you guys now. I am so grateful for each and every one of you. I think there's like 50 of you now. Thank you so much for becoming a patron. I usually shout you guys out at the end of the video, but there is a little bit too many of you guys now to do that, so I'm just gonna put your names on the screen here. Thank you to each and every one of you, and to the rest of my patrons as well. If you also want to become a patron, there is a link in the description where you can sign up and get exclusive perks for your donations. We just finished off 2 rounds of a Patreon-specific bracelet competition. We might start a 3rd one, depending on if you guys want me to. And by you guys, I mean my patrons. We host them over on Discord, and you can gain access to that Discord even by donating $1. So if you do want a 3rd round, let me know in the Discord. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!